Welcome back, sewists. Today we're going to work on some pattern making. I have some beautiful fabrics that I want to work on, and I want to make a very simple top out of both fabrics. So I am going to start with a new pattern. I looked at patterns I currently have, and they're all for knits. And the fabric I have, though it technically is a knit, it has almost 0% stretch. So I really need a pattern for a woven. I want a dolman style top because it has the fewest seams, and you'll see why as we continue this little series. This week's only going to be the pattern. However, next week I'm going to show you making the pattern in lace and some of the special sewing techniques that we're going to use in making the garment. And then the next week we're going to be making it in sequins. So, and I'm going to have a whole video just on the special techniques needed to sew with a sequin fabric. Now, I'm not applying sequins. The fabric's covered in sequins already, and it takes its own special techniques. So that's what we're going to be doing for the next few weeks. Today we're going to just work on the pattern. I want to do a dolman top. Sometimes you will hear them called a kimono style sleeve or a dolman style sleeve. It's where the sleeve is part of the bodice. Usually it'll have a seam along the top of the sleeve, under the sleeve, and down the side. That's pretty much it. Sometimes there'll be a front and back seam also. I want as few seams as possible, mainly because of the sequins, but I also don't want a lot of seams in my lace. So today we're going to make or draft a dolman style top. I pulled out a pattern I've made quite a few times. This is Berta 6590, and it's so cute, and it's pretty close to what I want, except I don't want the band. It has a band. It's a dolman with a little band right here, and I don't want the band. I just want a nice tunic sort of shape. So I pulled this out. I added length to it because originally I thought, well, they're both knits, it'll work great, but this actually needs more stretch than my fabric has. It would technically work for the lace the way I've drafted it, but I think I'm going to prefer a little bit softer flow. So one option would be to start with this and just continue to size up the pattern to add back in the ease to allow for it to work for a woven without stretch. But I could also just start from scratch and show you how easy it is to draft a dolman top. So that's what we're going to do today. I'm going to show you what the pattern looks like that you start with in full size, but I'm going to draft for you in half scale because it's just so much easier to see in the camera. So if you like my cute little top, I will have it linked below. This is one of the videos that I did, and it's got a neat border print that I put at the shoulder instead of at the hem. Anyway, if you'd like to make it, I will have it linked below. We're going to use my favorite pattern making resource. This was my college textbook. I recently reordered it. I have a video where I talk about all of my resources, which will be linked, and that's what I'm going to use to show you some of the basics of what we're going to work on today. We're doing the dolman, or sometimes it's called the kimono. I've heard it's really how high the sleeve is, if it's straight out or slightly angled. Also, if you have a full sleeve, sometimes called bat wing, all really the same as far as how it's put together. The sleeve will be part of the bodice. We're just going to be making a front and back today. If you're doing this in full scale, you need a Vogue, a Simplicity, a Butterick, this basic sloper pattern, which is what I'm going to use to make my full-size one. But today, we're going to work in half scale because it's so much easier for you to see what I'm doing. It doesn't get too unwieldy on camera. I have a link for these for free, so you can pick up your own set if you want them. So those will also be linked below. They're on my website, and they will be linked in the description if you want some half scale. They fit perfectly if you have a little half scale mannequin. We're going to start with the front, and I need, when doing a dolman style, you want a bodice front that does not have the side underarm dart. So you can either move that dart out, which there are directions, and we've actually done this in some of the pattern making videos. If you've not done that before, I have reference for that, but there's also one with the darts already joined, so you can see how wide this dart is here at the waistline. So we're going to use that to start with. Got my pattern paper. Because of how this is made, even if you left the dart in, it probably would work out okay, but we're gonna make sure we don't have that. If you happen to have made your own slopers that fit your body, and you have a one that has the bodice and the skirt joined, like for dresses, that's the perfect one to use. Use that. If you don't, it doesn't matter. So I'm just gonna trace this to start. I like to use felt tip markers because it makes it easy to see, but I'm just gonna go real dark with my pencil today, and I'll come back with felt tip. Felt tip will bleed through this pattern paper onto your table. So if I use it, I always make sure I put something underneath. Remember, when working with slopers, there's no seam allowance. We will come back and add that at the end. So you can see I have made a little copy of my bodice front, and now I'm gonna find out over my skirt front. And we're gonna bring it down here. And I'm just gonna match up my fronts. I'm gonna use my ruler to make sure I keep my grain lines straight for both of them. And we're gonna trace it. Because we're just using this as a guide, I'm not gonna go any longer than this hip, so I'm gonna go ahead and trace that. And we're gonna come in and take our sleeve. And because this is the front, we wanna make sure we use our front sleeve. Front sleeve will have 1 notch, back sleeve will have 2. Because the pattern has the line straight down it, makes it very easy for us to know where to line it up. We're only using half. I'm going to, in my garment, when I make mine, not have quite the full length sleeve. So I'm going to end short. You can move out the elbow dart if you want to. I'm not going to worry about it, but you can. The elbow dart's on the back side, so for the front of the sleeve, it won't even affect it. So we're going to trace down our half of our sleeve. I'm not going all the way to the wrist. And I'm going to trace this part, and you're going to see how they're all sort of disjointed, but we're going to smooth all this out and join it. Depending on how sharp you want your shoulder, I'm going to move this so you can see how sharp that shoulder is. Kimono is almost always straight out. Dolman and battling and some of those might be a little more angled down, so I'm just going to show you how you can change that angle. I'm going to put a little dotted line. So I'm going to move the yellow pattern. It'll be easy for you to see. So you could easily do this angle and do your sleeve if you would rather have that shape. Those are your options. This is our basis. This is it. This is all we need to get to our final dolman. In our book, I'll bring this down this way so you can see it. In the book, you can see how they start with the back. Doesn't matter that much. And on this one, they have a nice straight one. You can see they have it more tapered. This is a very traditional dolman shape. And then they do it for the back. You can do it as short or as long as you need. If you need a lot more room, they show how you do that. And they show how to make this a bat wing. So the book is amazing for that. I will also tell you, if you go on Pinterest and a lot of those places, a lot of these instructions will be out there too. So you can at least see the pattern making part, even if it's not explained. So now that I've done that, I get to make some fun design decisions. So this is my front, so I need to think about what my neckline shape is going to be. And this, because it is the traditional sloper, it is a high jewel neck. So it comes all the way up here. And I want this to slip over my head. So I have to have a wide enough neck opening that I can slide it on. I also want to have a wide enough body that I can slip it over my shoulders. I don't want to be putting a zipper or any fasteners into this. So I'm going to open up my neckline, kind of keeping the same shape. And you want to make sure when you work with anything that's going to be cut on the fold that this corner, this point right here, is straight. If it comes at any angle, you'll either get a point down or a point up that you won't want. So we want to just make sure that this little part right here is very straight and we're good. So all of this is going to go away. And now we're going to work on our hip line. Now for me, I need a fuller hip anyway, so I'm going to add a little bit of fullness to this hip. and it depends on your measurements. And I'm gonna come in and shape this sleeve and this underarm. Because we have this open here at this, we've added a lot in the waist anyway. You could shape this a little bit if you want it, but you have to make sure it's wide enough that it'll go over your shoulders if you're gonna pull this over your head like I am. I'm gonna just pull this in to give us a nice underarm shape. And this is how wide our sleeve is. Now, this is half scale, so if I measure this, my sleeve is currently gonna be 9 inches around. Half scale, which is 18 inches full scale. I'm gonna bring this back up in currently, that's how wide my sleeve is gonna be, which is not as wide as what I'm wearing, but you see that's a full sleeve. And then if I wanted to gather that onto a cuff, it would give a nice gather. This is the part where I can start playing with this and say, you know, I want a fuller sleeve, I want my shape to change. It'd be very easy to bat wing this and create a bat wing. And always keep in mind where your waist is and where that sleeve is going to end. Usually the sleeve will go into the waist or just above it, and so that you know where to shape from for a bat wing. So this is now my bat wing. If I want more of a lantern sleeve, I would actually make it fuller at the hem, which I kind of do. So now my sleeve shape, nice and soft and smooth. We don't want any sharp edges. And this will be my new wide sleeve. For the lace, it'll just have a pretty edge. When I go to my sequins, I will gather it onto a cuff. So we've got our neckline taken care of, we've got our sleeve taken care of, and I will trace this off clean so when it's finished, it'll look, you won't have all these extra lines. All right, we're now going to work on our hemline. I want a high-low. I almost always do a high-low because it's just the most flattering for my shape. I like a little longer in the back, a little shorter in the front. It's also more comfortable to wear. So I'm going to come up here, same rule as we did for the neckline. We want this to start out straight. Now, when I do it on my full scale, I measured exactly where I want that to end in the front and where I want it to end on the side seam. And I make those marks. And then I use my nice little hip curve to draw between them to get a nice smooth edge. And now, this is all gonna go away. This is my current pattern. I added all this ease in the hip line, so I have plenty of room. Hip line, bust line, sleeve, neckline to make a woven garment I can pull over my head. The only thing I think I need to change is right here in this shape. I just wanna make sure this shape right here connects up nicely. Now that I've done all of that, I am going to retrace this nice and clean. If this was the pattern I'm going to work on, I want a nice clean pattern to work from. If I have extra lines, I'm going to forget where I'm supposed to cut. So I'm going to take my paper and I'm going to come back over and trace it. Now this is where I usually go with my felt tip markers. I like to do like the cutting line one color and the sewing line another color. So currently all we have are sewing lines. So I'm going to make my sewing lines lavender. I'm going to use my rulers to help me keep them nice and straight. And you can see how that could easily blade through. All right, this is my cutting line that I'm doing right now. And then we're going to come back and add our seam allowances to this. Now this is on the fold, so this is the time where you want to add all of your pattern directions also. So I'm going to go ahead and put fold here. And I'm writing upside down. I'm going to cut one on fold. Put my little marks here. So I remember how I'm cutting this out. All right, so I'm going to use black for my cutting line. Now, if I'm making this in full scale, I use 5/8" seam allowance, but because this is half scale, I'm using 1/4 inch because that is the appropriate scale down. So this is my new cutting line. Do not add to the center front because the center front is on the fold. Sleeve usually has more of a seam allowance, but because I'm going to do a cuff
on one, that only needs the 1/4 inch. On the other is lace, and I'm going to be using the lace edge for its hem. So I'm only going to do 1/4 inch on this. On my other one, I will do the 5/8. But if you were going to hem this sleeve, I would do 1 inch to 1 1/4 inch full scale for your seam allowance. Now, because I'm doing this in a woven, anywhere that you have a tight curve could bind or pull. So we want to make sure that we keep our curves as open as possible so they lay nicely on the body if you're doing wovens. Now hem, same thing. Hem is usually 1 1/4 inch. I'm going to go ahead and do 5/8 on this for demonstration purposes. I think when I go to my sequin, I'm probably going to do a satin bound hem, so I won't need as much seam allowance, but for this purpose, I think that makes sense. So I'm going to pull away that. So now you can see our little dolman top with this neckline. We're going to repeat all of this for the back, and really the only thing that changes is you have to make sure everything lines up. So when we do our back one, we want to make sure that our side seams match up, but I'm going to change the hem at the back. We want to make sure our necklines line up, so that's what we're going to do next. My back has a shoulder dart that I don't need. So when I trace this off, I'm going to remove that shoulder dart. And this is how. You can see I've traced to the dart. And now I'm going to slide this underneath there so the dart closes and complete it. And there's my back. So now that I have got my back bodice traced, before I come to my skirt, I should have done this on the first and it worked the same, but I'm gonna go ahead and use this line to make it straight, to make sure I keep my fold line straight so that when I pull in my skirt, I'm lining up nice and even to something. And now I can just trace my skirt shape. I'm also going to mark this hip line. We're going to come in with our sleeve, make sure we're using the 2 notches, which is the back sleeve. And before I go any farther, I'm going to need my original pattern to start comparing to. As I work on this, I'm going to make sure that these lines match up, that this shape matches up. Where it's going to be stitched together has to be in alignment. So first thing I'm concerned about is that my shoulder seam shape is the same. So I have the same angle and shape. It has this is my original. The original has the neckline before I cut it off, which is what I need. So I'm going to line this up so I get the angle the same. And that way I know where to put my sleeve angle to keep them the same. So now I'm going to trace my sleeve like I did before. Now, that's pretty much what we did last time. We got this far and then we just got to make decisions about how we wanted to change it. So let's look at this piece. I'm actually going to slide this pattern piece under this one. Now, they should be different as far as where the side seam is. Like it can be wider in the back than the front, which mine always is. I always make mine wider in the back. But what needs to match up is this point right here where they're going to sew together. So those are the things that we're going to work on now. So I'm going to come in, I want this shape right here to be the same. I'm doing that stitching line, not cutting line. And my hip line out here nice and wide. Remember, I added all of this fullness so that it would go over the head, and then my shoulder seam here, where they match up, this is where the neckline needs to start in the back. So you can see this is the existing pattern I need to make my sleeve a little wider, and I'm just gonna bring that back for sleeve width. And often the back sleeve is even wider than the front, so I made a mark to the front, and I'm gonna make it just a teeny bit wider. Now, and this is not as crucial because it is not very fitted. There's a lot of wearing ease in it. Now the front curved down. The back is going to curve the opposite direction, giving us the high-low. Get it off that crevice. So this is where they meet at the side seam, and then this is where I have to decide how much longer I want the back than the side seam. On my own body, it's usually 3 to 4 inches. So on half scale, it'd be like 1.5 inches. So you can measure down to 1.5, which is gonna be about right there. But you can make it more dramatic if you want to. And now I just need to do my neckline. Now you can do anything. If you want a plunging back, you can do a plunging back. If you want it pretty fitted at the back so that it doesn't slide around on your shoulders, you can do that. You could even open this up and make it asymmetrical, so one side's off the shoulder and one side isn't. So you could trace it so that you have it duplicated, mirror imaged, and change your neckline to be asymmetrical. You can make the sleeve asymmetrical. There's so many options. So for me, I just want to make it pretty. Don't want to make it too low in the back neck because I want it to sit nice. So now I have a back dolman ready to go. Now I'm going to do the same thing I did to the front, add my seam allowance to it. I'm just going to show you a comparison so you can see when we sew together what they're going to be like. So let me add seam allowance to this. We're just going to finish adding our seam allowance along this neckline, and then I'm going to cut out both pieces and show them to you side by side so you can see how it looks. I left my old pattern underneath so it didn't transfer down to my table. And I can compare the two and see if I need to make any changes. Okay, so we have got our front and our back, and you can see how much shorter, now they don't line up, how much shorter the front is to the back. I laid them on top of each other with how they will be sewn together like this. You can see front necklines deeper than the back neckline. And my main thing is I want to make sure that our shoulder seams are the same, our underarm seam is the same, everything matches up. So now this is ready to be cut. So what I'm going to do now, off camera, I'm going to cut it out and sew it together real quick, and I'll come back and I'm going to show it to you on Dot, my half scale dress form. So I'll be back in just a second. We are now ready to go sew this up, and I'll show you how cute it is. I'm gonna give this a haircut and we'll go put it on Dot. Okay, we have a little tiny shirt. I immediately thought of when we made shepherd's costumes for children's plays. So we're gonna dress Dot here. One thing about making half scale before you go to full scale is it lets you see things that you might want to change. And the first thing I see is I want a fuller sleeve. Look at her little sleeve here. I definitely want to go fuller on that sleeve. I like the high-low. When there's no arm in it, the sleeve hangs a little different too. So there is a little Dolman top. Off camera, I'm going to do the same thing, but I'm going to make my big pattern. So when we come back next week and we will cut it out of lace, we'll do the lace sewing techniques, and I'm going to show you how to reapply the scallop lace edge because of how it's cut out. We're going to lose that beautiful scallop, but we're going to reapply it for all of our hems. So that will be next week's video. Thanks for sewing with me. I'll see you next week for another fun video. If you found this video helpful, informative, or just entertaining, please consider leaving a like, subscribing, and maybe giving me a hype.